trigger then you have my permission to die.
What up? Welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and continue our look at the Dark Knight Trilogy wave from McFarlane's DC Multiverse collection. Now, we have previously looked at Scarecrow, Two-Face, and the Joker. So this time we will take a look at Batman himself, the Dark Knight. Now, you can consider this from either the Dark Knight or the Dark Knight Rises. It is basically the same costume, and of course both times played by Christian Bale. Now, I am actually torn on Bale's portrayal of the Dark Knight. I do enjoy it. A little bit of the actual Batman part of it isn't my cup of tea, but all in all, as a whole, he did give a pretty good performance. Now, I'm not a big fan of the voice that he uses in the films, and I don't think that it's actually aged very well, but aside from that, I do know the love that this trilogy has and that this version of the Dark Knight represents for a lot of people. Now, a couple of interesting things on this figure. We will take a look at them, and then we will compare with the old Movie Masters Mattel figures, which is basically the only ones I have in my collection. So pretty happy to get this newer version of Batman, and he does look pretty dark in the packaging. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. But first, he does come with your standard black DC Multiverse stand. Now, these are not always needed, but sometimes they do come in useful. He also comes with his data file card. Now, on the front, it's pretty interesting. Not necessarily sure that it's rendered art of the figure. The cape does look more like a cloth cape, but you do have a little bit of figure style details on the legs, so it's just probably a rendered picture of the figure the way they thought it was going to look, while it was in production. And on the back, you do have some information. Pretty sweet. We'll add it to the collection. Now, he does come with some cool accessories. First of all, he does come with his classic grapnel gun that he uses throughout the trilogy. Kind of an all gold version here, but we will be adding some details to that to get it more, film accurate. So pretty cool. We'll hold on to this. He also does get 3 batarangs, which is pretty cool. Don't usually get 1, let alone 3. And I mean, the size of them is something that we'll have to look at later on in the review, but they are from the Dark Knight. They have that classic Dark Knight shape, and I'm pretty happy to have them. He also does come with the 2 legs of Bane. We will be taking a look at Bane in another video, and also I'll be doing some repaints on all the previous figures, so we'll be taking a look at those. Plus, I will be repainting Bane and showing them off to you guys, so look forward to that video. But now let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. First impressions. I've actually always been looking for, a larger scaled figure of the Dark Knight. Now, of course, I think there's different like Mayfegs, but I had always been holding out hope that McFarlane would do his version. So luckily, he did come through. Now, you could just see the cool detail on the whole batsuit. All of the plates and all of the straps that hold it together are all there in the sculpt. Looks really good. The head is actually perfectly proportioned to the suit, and all in all, it is a really nice rendition of the second Dark Knight suit. Now, in all honesty, I prefer the Batman Begins suit. I do have the Mattel one. Actually, I have 2 of them, and I just love that design better. It's more simple and more sleek. This one's more like armored and just a slight bit more tactical. Then I really like that kind of ninja-esque vibe that you get from the original Batman Begins suit. But I am happy to get this one and put him up on my live action shelf. So, all in all, he does look really good. And then, of course, you do have that classic Dark Knight emblem on the chest. And you could see all that cool armor plating and detail that McFarlane likes to add to his figures. Moving down into that classic belt. I'm not so sure that the belt changed much in between films. It always had that like gold tone with like a little bit of silver highlights. So basically this is a pretty cool true to film rendition of the belt. Let's take a look at the head sculpt. Now it's very easy to see Bale in the head sculpt, even though you only see his mouth. It does give you the vibes of Christian Bale. There's no doubt about it. You do have like that orbital shape around the eyes and the frown and the brow. So it does have cool detail. It's all there. The mouth is painted really well. You got different tones of skin color. All in all, this is one of the better head sculpts from live action that McFarlane has done. But of course now he's getting into his own and doing a lot better with the head sculpts. Let's take a look at the articulation. Does look down really well. You also look up really well, which is pretty nice. No need to mod this head. And you also get a nice glance at that neck. The way they modified the neck for the next films were to give him more like movement in his neck, which was like a running joke in the film. You do got right to left. And you can tilt his head for some character. All in all, beautiful head sculpt, beautiful articulation, nice range. So that's, starting off good for this figure from McFarlane. Let's take a look at the waist articulation. You do have side to side at the waist. You also have that tilt-a-whirl, full range at the waist. So you could go all the way around. You got lower waist swivel, upper chest swivel, so you can twist them, get them in some action poses. Actually looks really seamless the way they like connected all the sections together, the upper torso to the abdomen. Now, interestingly enough, he has an awesome crunch. You could get him almost in a seating position just by using his waist. And you can actually see it in the different segments in the waist. You could actually see him collapse down to where it almost touches the belt. Pretty awesome. And of course, as always, no problem leaning back for this figure. So all in all, really nice articulation at the waist for McFarlane. Let's take a look at the shoulders. Now, this is going to be something, this one's going to be pretty interesting because I did see some people trying to shove like the shoulder pauldron underneath the cape, but of course this is wrong. But let's take a look at the shoulder articulation first. You do have that traditional McFarlane socket with the bushing, which gives you added range, a lot of movement in that shoulder. Of course, you do have up and down, front to back. That bushing moves really nicely. You got a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, pretty clean. Straighten them back out and like moving from that shoulder pad down. You got all the details of the armor, and you even have those double forearm blades that are represented in the films. Pretty cool. And of course, this side has, the left side has a fist, and you do have that four-way of articulation at the wrist for McFarlane. And not only that, but just look at that sculpted wrist joint. It just makes it so seamless, the way it goes from the gauntlet into the hand, just almost getting into like perfect action figure execution. It's just looking really good. On the right side you have the same thing, but you do have a trigger grasping hand on this side. Now let's get into raising up the arms, because that is a little bit of, some kind of contention between reviewers. Now you do want to put the guard over the cape, and then you do want to move it above the bicep, not at the elbow, because that's a good way to break off, to pop off the arm. So as you can see, it moves rather nicely above the cape. And if you can't get it to do that, just pull back a little bit and it'll like unglue itself, like not completely, but enough to where it's like free, free from the shoulder. And then you could get it over the cape and get them in that classic T pose. Now I did see a lot of reviews where they were saying that the arm pops off. Now I originally tried to pull off the left arm, and as much as I try to pull it and swivel it off, it will not come off. So I don't think that was, the problem. I think it was the right arm. But this is another one of those situations where the way McFarlane designs the figures, they're designed so to like avoid breakage. And when I say breakage, I mean like a complete snap where there's no way to fix it. Sort of like the way NECA figures tend to break on people. And that's at the joint where once you break it, there's no fixing it. Of course, if you glue it, you're going to lose articulation. And aside from, doing a lot of work, like adding pins and stuff like that, you're not going to get it to work. But what I did notice is that the right arm, if you do put stress on it, it will pop out. But if you hear that, that's kind of like a suction noise, because the way it's designed is it has kind of like that like wider end, and then it gets narrow, and that's made to actually go back into the socket. What that allows is that it's not really breaking, it's more just like popping out. Once you pop it back in and you're careful with it, it really will not come back out. I mean, you could put basically, bend the elbows and put different stress on it, and it will not pop back out unless you really put a lot of force. But even when you put a lot of force, it just pops back in. So all in all, it's not, nothing to write home about. And you could still put his arms up above his head. Got some nice range there. Pretty awesome. Actually, some pretty nice articulation from McFarlane when you look at it. So remember, those shoulder pauldrons go actually above the cape, not under it. Moving down, let's take a look at the thighs. Now, as always, if you heat these up, you get a lot more movement out of them than if you do it, cold. But there is hip swivel there. Now, of course, what this is supposedly designed for is that you can move the leg right to left, which is pretty much what a human leg does, but there's no thigh cut or any ugly articulation like that, but you still get some range there. And of course, that allows the sculpt to stay complete. Now you still got a lot of range. He does kick up pretty high, and then he also kicks back pretty high. Now this is one thing I gotta stress, is do not be afraid to push the rubber of the trunks. That is actually what they're designed for, is to give you more range and more movement. But once you put them back to their original, starting position, the trunks actually end up, forming back to their original shape. So you don't have to have any fear of like, putting the legs in different positions, and you don't have to really fear of ripping the trunks or doing anything like that or warping them, because eventually they do go back to their original position. Now you can pop out his knee, and he has that cool McFarlane hip swivel. Double jointed knees look pretty nice. Straighten them out. You have up and down at the ankle, beautiful range. You got right to left, rocker, and of course toe. Articulation. Now before we go, let's take a look at the whole lower body. I mean, just beautiful sculpt work by McFarlane. You can even see like all the separation in the armor, and even the boots have their like own fine little like texture grain that they have embedded in them, and it's so small that you could barely feel it and see it, but it is there. What just, what a beautiful added detail. And then look at the way the ankle joints are sculpted out. You got the wrinkles in the boots, and it matches completely, with the upper calf part down into the boot part. Just beautiful sculpt work from McFarlane. All in all, I'm really happy with this Dark Knight figure. Taking a look at him from the bottom, something I love to see, which is some boot tread. And then moving up the back, more detail in all that armor, all the separation plates, all the like joints that have movement, different textures, like kind of like a Kevlar feel to it. The back of that gold belt, just awesome attention to detail. And I always thought it was cool that this Batman utility belt has like a cell phone pouch. And I think this even is like they even had it in the Mattel figures. It had like a little cell phone like designed in the pouch, which I always thought was rather interesting. And then the cape. Now, the cape is pretty simple. And what's cool about it is you can lift it and give it, give them like some flowing, motion, or like if wind's blowing. But it's not too wide and not too heavy, so it doesn't like bog down the figure. It's actually like a perfect fitting cape for this design. So all in all, I'm really happy with him. He's an awesome Batman figure. Perfectly stands on his own with no problem at all. Now, let's go ahead and bring out the old school Mattel figures. As I said before, I do have the Batman Begins, which was, the first movie masters from Mattel, and I love the design of that first costume. I don't know what it is about it. It just has like a thicker, more compact design and simpler design that looks more comic book inspired than the later like armor plating. But I also do have the regular, Dark Knight one. And, comparing these next to each other now that, the years have passed and now we see it, this is, we're just moving away from the smaller scale, like 5 and 6 inch. For me, it's like, doesn't do anything for me anymore. It's just passé, I guess you could say. And I'm really happy with McFarlane's 7-inch version of characters. It's just, they just look really good on the shelf. And the way you can pose them and put them in different positions, kind of like a statue. I know it's bad to say that about a McFarlane figure, but it's like a statue, like those like resin statues, but you can always go back and put him in a different position and change his, the little diorama around him. So that's kind of what I like about these figures, is they have that feel of like a display on your desk, but you can always move them and put them in different positions or different situations. Now I do have another version. This one actually has like a cloth cape and has more of like a copper wash on it. I think this one came from the 2-pack with the Bane that was shirtless. Moving away from these figures, they were fun when I first had them, and they were fun when that's all there was. But this is what I'm into right now. The 7-inch scale looks beautiful. Now another thing I wanted to talk about was the batarangs. It does fit in his hand. It is scaled a little bit differently because in the film they're like a little bit smaller than this, more like a Shuriken size, so they're a little bit smaller than this in scale. But as usual from McFarlane, it's not going to be perfect, but it is cool that he gave us 3 of these. Now I guess people might have forgotten what Mattel gave us when they gave us this version of the Dark Knight, because they gave us this humongous Batarang. Now I know this was more just like, to give you something, but they didn't include any accessories with him, not the grapnel gun, nothing. So I don't know why they made this when they could have at least given him some regular batarangs. But this is cool to have in the collection. It was like a little evidence pack or something like that. But if you did want something that was more in scale with the film, you would have something more like this size, which is like a little batarang I just repainted. But that's more like what it was in the film. And then of course you have his grapnel gun. Now, I did want to touch up the grapnel gun. If you look up images, they show you basically what it really looks like in the film. And although it does have its gold, it also has like a sort of black, like a little bit like of a semi-gloss feel to it. So I went ahead and painted in the exact same parts that are painted in the movie replicas. And then of course you can stick it in his hand. And with that 4-way articulation at the wrist, you just have tons of possibilities for posing and, you know, showing him off with that grapnel gun. So, all in all, pretty happy with this. Now, I did start repainting him, which is what I'm going to show you guys when I do my Bane review. And what I'm going to do is this one's like really heavy on the gray. But if you look at other representations of this costume, there is gray, but it's slight. It's not so much how they have it here. So I did take like a jet black matte, and I painted the emblem and some of the chest plates. So you could kind of see the difference. I'll put the two pictures side by side. But I'm going to go for a more like all black scheme. Like even the boots and the gauntlets, I'm going to paint with this same black color. And we'll see how it looks when I do my Bane review. But anyways, guys, pretty awesome figure. He's going to be awesome up there on my live action shelf with the rest of the figures from this wave. You guys, keep hunting out there. Keep collecting. Keep customizing. And I will see you on the next one.
Call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.